In the wake of the Titans, we find the ruins of the past and the blueprints for a brand new future. Join us as we explore the legacies of greatness and the stories of those who dared to lead. Subscribe now and follow the path of the legends today.
I didn't look at my brother when he walked into the courtroom. I heard him, though. The way his Oxfords hit the marble floor, deliberate, slow. The walk of a man who had already decided he'd won. I kept my eyes forward, on the water stain, near the base of the witness stand, the one shaped vaguely like the state of Ohio. I'd been staring at it for 11 minutes, I'd counted. My attorney, a small woman named Beverly Cho who wore reading glasses on a chain and had the quiet ferocity of someone who'd been underestimated her entire career, leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" "Fine," I said, and I was. That was the strange part. I was completely, unnervingly fine. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Harmon took his seat. He was older than I'd expected from the case files. Mid-60s, a silver beard trimmed close. The kind of face that had probably been handsome once and had since settled into something better. Trustworthy. He set a legal pad on the bench and clicked his pen twice. I had been sitting in this building in one capacity or another for 3 years. Not this courtroom specifically. Not this city. But buildings like this one. Marble floors. Fluorescent lights humming just below the threshold of hearing. The smell of recycled air and old paper. Those I knew. My brother did not know that. That was the thing about my brother. He knew the version of me that existed before I left. The one who used to fall asleep on the couch, watching old movies. Who burned every batch of cookies she attempted. Who cried at the end of every season of every show she ever watched. He knew that girl intimately. He had catalogued her weaknesses with the care of a collector. He did not know what I had become in the decade since, and today he was going to find out. My mother died 14 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, the fast kind. She was diagnosed in September and gone by February. I flew back for the diagnosis, stayed 3 weeks, went back to work, flew back for Thanksgiving, flew back for Christmas, flew back when her doctor called me in January and said we were running out of time. My brother did not fly back for any of those trips. He lived 40 minutes away. His name is on the deed to the house I grew up in. His name is on the joint checking account my mother set up when she first got sick, because she thought it would make things easier for me to help her manage her finances remotely. His name is on every holiday card my mother sent for the last 8 years, listed first. The way she always listed him first. The way she had listed him first since the day I was born and he was 4 years old, and already the sun around which our family orbited. My name is on the trust. That was the part my brother could not accept. My mother had a trust she'd set up years before her diagnosis. With an attorney she'd found herself and paid for herself, without consulting my brother, without telling me, until about 2 years before she got sick. She called me on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual because she always called on Sundays, and she said, "I want to talk to you about some paperwork." I remember I was sitting in my car in a parking garage, engine still running, still in the clothes I'd been wearing for about 19 hours straight. I remember thinking, I should find a better parking spot. This one is under a water pipe. She told me about the trust. She told me she was leaving the house and the bulk of her estate to me, with a smaller distribution to my brother. Because, and this was the part that lodged in my chest like a splinter, because she knew I had spent the last 7 years sending her money she'd never asked for and never told anyone about. $1,100 a month, sometimes more when something broke. A new furnace, the roof in 2019, the deductible when she slipped on ice in the driveway and broke her wrist. "He doesn't know," she said, meaning my brother. "I know," I said. I had always known she would never tell him. Telling him would have required an explanation he couldn't have processed. She said, "I'm not leaving it to you because you paid. I'm leaving it to you because you've been taking care of this family quietly for years, and nobody has thanked you, and I want to say it. At least in this way, at least with this." I sat in that parking garage for a long time after we hung up. My brother contested the trust 11 days after the funeral. He hired an attorney named Gordon Webb, a man whose suits were always slightly too large, as though he were wearing his confidence on the outside and had overestimated the amount he'd need. Gordon Webb specializes in estate disputes in the county where I grew up. He has a billboard on Route 9. I have driven past it. The claim was straightforward, legally speaking. My brother alleged that I had exerted undue influence over my mother in her final years, and that certain withdrawals from the joint checking account, the one she and I had both had access to, constituted misappropriation of estate funds. In plain English, he was telling the court I had stolen from our dying mother. He had spreadsheets. Gordon Webb presented them with the air of a man representing the ZC scrolls. These highlighted rows, these circled figures, these dates that corresponded with transfers I had made. What the spreadsheets did not include, because my brother did not know they existed, were the corresponding deposits. The $1,100 a month, the furnace invoice, the roofing contractor's receipt, the hospital bill, with my credit card number at the bottom. What the spreadsheets also did not include was any acknowledgement that for the last 7 years I had been paying for my mother's life, quietly, without being asked, without expecting to be thanked, and certainly without expecting to be sued for it. My brother sat at the plaintiff's table and did not look at me. He had always been good at that. The studied non-look. The deliberate arrangement of his gaze to exclude me from his field of vision. He did it at family dinners. He did it at my mother's funeral, when I stood at the graveside, and he stood on the other side of the grave, and looked slightly to the left of my shoulder for the duration of the service. He did it now, here, in this courtroom, with his too large suit attorney and his highlighted spreadsheets. I looked at him directly. I had nowhere else to be. Gordon Webb called my brother to the stand first. I will say this for my brother. He is a genuinely good liar. Not in the way that people mean when they say it as a compliment. Not clever, not quick. He's good in the way that comes from years of practice. From a childhood spent constructing narratives in which he was always the reasonable one, the wronged one, the one who had tried so hard and been given so little credit. He told the court that our mother had been easily influenced in her final years. He said she had been isolated. He said that I had visited often, this was true, and that during those visits, I had monopolized her attention and discouraged contact with him. He did not explain why. If our mother was so easily influenced and so eager for contact with him, he had not visited her during her final year. Gordon Webb did not ask him about that. Beverly would. My brother said that he had noticed irregularities in the account statements starting about 3 years ago. He said he had brought his concerns to our mother, and she had dismissed them, which he attributed to my influence rather than to the more obvious explanation, which was that our mother was a grown woman in full possession of her faculties who had been making her own financial decisions for 67 years. He said, and this is the part that stayed with me, the part I have turned over in my mind many times since. My sister has lived a very unclear life. She's never been transparent about what she does for work. She's always been vague about where she lives. She moves around a lot. She doesn't explain herself. My mother found that troubling. Our mother had not found it troubling. I know this because our mother and I spoke twice a week for 11 years. And she had never once expressed anything other than curiosity and pride about the work I did. But I could not say that yet. Beverly had told me to sit still and let him talk. So I sat still. I let him talk. I looked at the water stain shaped like Ohio. Gordon Webb approached me on the second day of testimony, with the energy of someone who had been looking forward to this particular moment. Miss, he began, using my name. And I noticed Judge Harmon glance up briefly from his notepad when he said it. Just a glance. I filed it away. You've described yourself as working in federal analysis. Gordon Webb said, making small quotation marks with his fingers, that I'm sure he thought looked devastating. Can you explain to this court, in plain terms, what that means? I work for the federal government, I said, in an analytical capacity. And where specifically do you perform this work? I'm not able to disclose that. You're not able to disclose your place of employment. That's correct. He let that sit. He was good at letting things sit, I'd give him that. He turned toward the bench, as if inviting Judge Harmon to appreciate the absurdity of this with him. Can you provide this court with any documentation of your employment? A pay stub? A W-2? An employment contract? My employment is classified, I said. Documentation of that nature is not available. Classified, he repeated. He said it the way you might say unicorns, as a word that belonged in a different category of reality. Miss, let me put this plainly. You are asking this court to accept that you have been financially supporting your mother for 7 years, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, on a salary from an employer you refuse to name, at a location you refuse to identify, doing work you refuse to describe. Is that your position? Yes, I said. That's very convenient. Beverly was on her feet. Objection. Withdrawn, Gordon Webb said, smiling. He turned back to me. Your brother has described you as someone who has, quote, lived a very unclear life. Would you say that's accurate? I thought about it for a moment. Just a moment. No, I said. My life has been very clear to me. He made a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a scoff, something in between, designed to be heard by the jury. I'm sure it has. No further questions. Beverly stood up. She straightened her jacket. She picked up a manila folder from our table and walked to the center of the room, and I watched her and thought, here we go, miss. Beverly said, in your work for the federal government, have you ever been recognized for your performance? Yes. Have you received commendations, awards, official recognitions of your work? Yes. Are those commendations classified as well? I paused. Some of them are. Not all. I'd like to introduce Plaintiff's Exhibit. I'm sorry, Defense Exhibit 14, Beverly said, handing a document to the clerk. For the record, this is a letter of commendation. Signed and dated, from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, recognizing the defendant's contributions to. She glanced at the page. A series of operations critical to national security, the details of which remain classified at the highest level. Gordon Webb was on his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. The relevance, Your Honor, Beverly said, still calm, is that opposing counsel has spent 2 days suggesting my client is unemployed, fabricating her income, and living, quote, an unclear life. The relevance is that her employer is the United States government. Her contributions have been recognized at the highest levels of the intelligence community, and the funds she used to support her mother were legally and legitimately earned. Judge Harmon looked at the document for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Not the way a judge typically looks at a defendant. With the practiced neutrality of someone managing a process, he looked at me differently. His eyes dropped to my lapel for just a fraction of a second. I was wearing a small pin. I wear it every day. Most people don't notice it, or they think it's decorative. A small silver compass rose, simple, understated. It is not decorative. Judge Harmon looked at it. He looked at me. Something passed across his face, not recognition exactly, but something adjacent to it. An acknowledgement, maybe. The subtle confirmation of a shared context. He looked back at the document. I'll allow it, he said. Beverly asked for a 10-minute recess after the exhibit was entered. My brother used that time to lean over and speak quietly to Gordon Webb, whose expression had shifted from confident to concentrated, the look of a man recalculating. I went to the hallway. There was a water fountain near the elevator bank, and I got a paper cup of water and stood by the window and looked at the parking lot below. It was a gray March day, the kind that can't decide whether it wants to rain. The trees outside hadn't budded yet. A man I didn't know stopped near me, waiting for the elevator. He was maybe 50, carrying a briefcase, wearing a lanyard with a county ID. He glanced at my PIN the way most people do, registering it, moving on. The elevator came. He got in. I finished my water. I went back inside. Beverly spent the afternoon walking the court through the financial records. Every transfer I had made to my mother's account matched to a corresponding deposit from my own. The furnace invoice from October 2020. The roofing estimate, the contractor's final bill. The check my mother had written to the contractor with my account as the funding source. The hospital deductible from 2021, 14 months of pharmacy receipts I had paid directly, because it was easier than sending my mother money, and having her navigate the pharmacy's billing system at Iwasuntitu with cataracts. Gordon Webb objected frequently. Judge Harmon sustained him occasionally, overruled him more often. My brother sat at the plaintiff's table and his face did something I had never seen it do before. It went still. Not angry still, not sad still. Just still, like something draining out. I had not come here for that. I want to be clear about that. I had not come here hoping to watch my brother's face do something terrible. I had come here because the alternative was allowing a court to officially record that I had stolen from my dying mother, and I was not going to allow that to happen. But I watched his face go still, and I felt something complicated. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like the closing of a door. Beverly entered the last exhibit. Defense Exhibit 22, she said. A letter from the defendant to her mother dated August of 2022, 17 months before his passing. I'll read the relevant portion. She looked at the page. I'm enclosing the transfer for September now, a little early, because I'll be traveling for work. And I want to make sure you have it before I lose access to reliable communication. Please don't mention it to my brother. I know you won't. Just use it for whatever you need. You have worked hard your whole life, and you deserve to have things be easy, at least for a while. The courtroom was quiet. Beverly set the letter down. No further questions. Judge Harmon called a brief recess before closing arguments. In the hallway, Gordon Webb approached Beverly, and they spoke quietly for about 4 minutes. I stood 10 feet away and looked at a poster about jury duty on the wall. Beverly came back. They want to settle, she said. No, I said. She looked at me. They're offering to drop the claim entirely. No admission of wrongdoing on either side. I know what settle means, I said. No. She was quiet for a moment. Can I ask why? I thought about my mother on the phone in my parking garage. I thought about her saying I want to say it, at least in this way. I thought about my brother at the graveside, looking just past my shoulder, having driven 40 minutes, to stand there, and look past my shoulder. And I thought about all the things I had never said, and all the things he had never said, and the way some silences accumulate until they have a weight to them, a physical presence you carry around. Because I want it on the record, I said. I want it official. I want a judge to say it. Beverly looked at me for a moment longer. Then she nodded. Okay, she said, let's go back in. Judge Harmon's ruling came the following afternoon. I was not in the courtroom when he read it. Beverly had told me I could wait in the hallway, that it was sometimes harder to sit through the reading than people expected, and she would come get me if anything required my presence. I sat on a bench outside the courtroom. The hallway had a skylight at one end, and the gray March light came through it in a way that made the marble floor look almost warm. Beverly came out. 22 minutes later she sat down next to me on the bench. She took off her reading glasses and held them in both hands. He dismissed it, she said, with prejudice. With prejudice means it can't be refiled. It means it's over. He also Beverly paused. He made some comments from the bench about the nature of the claim. He characterized it as, his exact words were without factual foundation, and transparently motivated by a desire to relitigate a testamentary decision the plaintiff found personally disappointing. I nodded. He also said. She paused again. He said that the evidence presented made clear that the defendant had contributed substantially to the welfare of the decedent over an extended period, at personal sacrifice and without recognition, and that the court finds this not merely credible but admirable. I sat with that for a moment. He said admirable, I said. He said admirable, Beverly confirmed. I looked at the skylight. The light was still the same gray-white diffuse, the kind that doesn't cast shadows. Somewhere below us in the parking garage attached to the building, my car was in space 4C. I had a 4-hour drive back to my apartment. I had a report due in the morning that I had been working on intermittently for 3 weeks, in the stolen hours between everything else, and I needed to finish it before 9 a.m. My brother, I said. What happens to him? Beverly was quiet for a moment. Nothing, legally. He had standing to file the claim. The claim was wrong, but it wasn't. He didn't commit perjury. Technically, he told a story that wasn't true, I said. He told a story that wasn't supportable, Beverly said, which was her careful way of saying, yes. I nodded. I had known this going in. I had not come here expecting consequences for him. I had come here expecting a record. There's one more thing, Beverly said. She hesitated, in the particular way she hesitated, when she wasn't sure how I would receive something. After the ruling, Judge Harmon came off the bench. Just briefly, before he went back to chambers, he stopped me in the doorway. She paused. He asked me to give you something. She reached into her jacket pocket and produced a small folded card, the kind you'd find in a hotel gift shop. Cream-colored with a simple border. I opened it. There were 3 lines, handwritten in the careful script of someone who had learned penmanship before it was optional. Your service has not gone unnoticed. It rarely does. Among those who know where to look. H below his initial he had sketched, small and precise, a compass rose. I folded the card and put it in my coat pocket, next to my own pin. My brother was in the lobby when I came downstairs. He was alone. Gordon Webb had apparently already left. He was standing near the exit, his coat on, his briefcase in his hand, looking out through the glass doors at the parking lot. He turned when he heard the elevator. He saw me. We stood there for a moment. The lobby was empty, except for a security guard at the far end who was looking at his phone. I genuinely thought, my brother said, and then stopped. Started again. I genuinely believed you had. I thought the money had come from. No, I said. He looked at the floor. The spreadsheets showed withdrawals, I said. Not deposits. You only looked at half the picture. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, someone pulled into the parking lot and the headlight swept briefly across the lobby floor and disappeared. She never told me, he said. About the money you were sending. I know. Why didn't she tell me? I thought about that. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone. The particular way she said he doesn't know. Like it was a fact of nature. Like it was the state of Ohio on a water stain. Just there, just true, not requiring explanation. Because she knew how you'd receive it, I said. She knew it would become about something. About you, about fairness, about what you deserved. She didn't want it to become about that. She wanted it to just be taken care of. My brother said nothing. His jaw moved slightly, the way it does when he's working through something he doesn't have language for yet. I'm not going to apologize, I said, for the trust or for any of it. I'm not asking you to, he said. His voice was quiet, not angry anymore, just quiet. Okay, I said. I walked past him toward the door. The security guard looked up briefly as I passed and then looked back at his phone. Outside, the air was cold and smelled like rain that hadn't arrived yet. I walked to the parking garage and found 4C, and got in and sat for a moment in the silence, hands on the wheel, not driving. In my pocket, the card from Judge Harmon. In my lapel, the compass rose. In 3 weeks, I would be somewhere I cannot name, doing work I cannot describe, and none of this would follow me there. That is the thing about the life I have built. It is entirely mine, known only to the people who need to know it, and it cannot be taken from a courtroom by a man with a highlighted spreadsheet and a billboard on Route 9. I started the car. The dashboard lights came on, familiar and quiet. I had 4 hours of driving and a report due in the morning. I pulled out of 4C and headed for the exit. The work, as always, was waiting.